So I thought I'd make a video about this. It's about my dad's Raymond Palomo, Hernandez Palomo, and his book reading experiences. My father was a very big book reader. One of the most book reading people I've ever met in my life. And this video would be helpful to Julian and Frankie and my biological mother, and saying a little bit about him. He's been dead for a very long time. I understand that, but I figured I'd just talk about it because I was really bothered by my mother's identical twin that was lying and making up stories about my father Raymond. And she doesn't know who he was, and she's using the persona of my biological mother to sort of make a mockery of the same image of my mother, and that's not the truth. It's very violating when I have to witness what I had to witness and do so many things and get nothing for it, and then have somebody tell my mother to do it, and then she's willing to do it. In my opinion, she's being beaten to do it. She's scared. She's in it for the money. She's in it because she doesn't have anything. And so everything that they tell her to do is because they're feeding her. And it's a really bad situation. But my father's book reading experiences, he never, opened a book and started reading to me. And he never told me, pieces of the book. He never did. He told me when it was a good book. When he had a really good time and it was a really good book that he really enjoyed, he really expressed that. And he'd be like, gosh, that was a really good book. Gosh. And one of his favorite books was The Godfather, The Mafia. I know we had The Godfather Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, which my father liked the Italian mafia, movies, and he was one of his favorite movies out of all the movies we used to watch together, and we recorded together. And he picked up the book, and I remember the book being all gold. It was all like golden, looked like it was gold, and it was a real thick book, like 500 pages, or not, more than probably for like 1,000 pages. I mean, it was like a thick book, and it was like almost 8.5 by 11. I want to say it wasn't a normal sized book. It was like a book, like almost 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, but nearly wasn't that size, but pretty close to it. It was one of his books, and he read like Part 1 and Part 2, he read a couple of them. But I do remember him saying he enjoyed the book a lot. And I remember watching the movie with him. Where you find have the scenes in the mafia, and it was one of his great movies he liked watching. But he never read to me the books that he was reading. I think I recall him maybe once reading a book to me when I was a kid. And maybe once or twice, but I know my father was always very polite in waking me up when I was in the morning and school would start. And I, just like all the other little kids, you start crying because you don't want to go to school and you want to stay in bed. We all go through it. My father was so gentle and so kind to me the way that he woke me up. And then, get ready for school. Come on, son, you got to get up ready for school. Mom wants you to go. My mother was just very haggling and nasty to me. She was like, Hector, it's time to get up. Like it was, she had to do it in order to get the family together. But my father was very kind, and I remember that, some of the things that I remember so well. I started asking my mother all the time. And I told my dad when my mother, wouldn't listen, and I would always prefer for my father to wake me up. And I said, Dad, can you wake me up? He said, Mom. When I was a kid, because my father he did it particularly somewhat kind of like a grandpa, I would think, or he was never, I mean, he spoke in very soft tones to me, and I remember that as a kid. My mother would be getting ready for work. My mother would be scrambling for things like we were getting kicked out of the house and being thrown to the streets like in Auschwitz, or like in the Holocaust or something. All right, we got to get up and we got to we got to prove to this man, which I didn't understand that, but that's how she behaved. And my father, I always enjoyed. He, gently would wake me up and, come on, son, you got to get up. Son. Come on, you got to go to school. So school didn't sound so bad, or waking up, but it was so traumatizing how my mother would wake me up because he was yelling, and it had nothing to do with that, nothing bad as a kid, because I wasn't a bad child. I wasn't a kid around my mother and father when I was a kid, like lighting fires and doing crazy bad stuff, and rotting on, throwing food and none of that. And but I thought I'd talk about my dad's book reading experiences. He never did, and I noticed that when my mother called, she was like, I could hear almost the other person telling her, like, this is what you say, yeah, you see how, yeah, stupid, yeah, you see, you doing what we tell, yeah, that was Raymond Colombo before he died, yeah, and poison him, more poison, and it was just feeding poison, and it was just, I couldn't believe that, it is very hurtful. It's hard for someone who, I've never heard of any circumstance like this where a identical twin poses themselves over the phone for all these years after the age of 20 years old, and it wasn't her whenever she showed up in that trash bag. I don't think it was my mother. And I honestly, this is truthful, I honestly do not believe when Frankie came home after my dad died, and we're, everything is just so startled because, our dad died, and I hadn't heard Frankie in like 4 years, and me and my dad would get me to write letters to him to try to contact him, and I was writing letters consistently, and my dad was telling me to write him letters because he wanted to know what happened to the house and money, what happened to his money, what happened, what's going on. My dad felt very abandoned, and and Frankie came home, and we had a really long talk, and we were talking about our dad going to soccer games, and our dad that that life is really short, and we're a family, and I was trying to we were talking that we're a family, like me, Frankie, and Julian, like we're all family, me, Frankie, and Julian, and Mom, we're all family, and Dad, we're all family. And he started crying I've never seen it. My brother's never cried like that ever in my life, ever. That's the only time he ever. And I could see it in his eyes. The whole vibe in the room was about my father, and he could sense my father. He could sense the emotion he had for my father. Even though he was mad at my dad, he sensed a lot of emotion for him. Like, he felt all the things, and it was hard because I got teary too. And while we were talking, we weren't arguing, because Frankie just came to the room, and he was kind of in a good mood, smiling, and not smiling, but in a good mood, just like, it's just kind of, these things happen kind of attitude, and it wasn't anything bad vibes. It was just like, I hadn't seen him for like 4 years, or 5 years, and my mother, Julian, stayed in the living room. And my mother, I'm sorry, it's not my mother. my mother's identical twin was in the living room, and she started shouting, and Julian had to get in front of my mother and said, no, leave them to talk. Leave them alone. I kid you not. I said, no, stay away. Get away now. And he was serious. And I hadn't really talked to Julian at all for like a year or something like that. We had no bad vibes. You know, I didn't tell him to do that. He did it because there's a personal understanding to the family that I grew up in, how we function. And I don't know, Julian was, I'm sure Julian knew that wasn't my mother, that was his identical twin. And Julian got in the way and kept my mother in the living room. And my mother was trying to poison Frankie's head, saying, no, Frankie, don't listen to him. Don't listen. He's crazy. Don't listen to him. Hey, Frankie, it's me. It's me. No, it's me. And that's what she was doing. And Julian got really mad because my dad had just died. And this wasn't my mother. This was an imposter who would be now being ordered to do this by someone. And then any toxicity that this person was going to be making was going to make it more worse because they were making it by their choice, but because they gave them the house and the money and all these things. How much of this blame do you blame on this person? But, you know, there wasn't a scuffle. Me and Frank, you know, we closed the door, we talked, and we had a good talk, and you know, I was standing in front of the DJ mixer, you know, and kind of crying, you know, getting really teary. And I felt pretty exhausted. Had been 7 years going to nursing homes. And then I was suffering, couldn't walk up 3 flights of stairs. And I just got out of, you know, Center Point Apartments when I was 20 years old. I had nothing, and no family, nothing. My family just abandoned me. But I thought I'd talk about that. You know, it's hard for me to mentally grasp why any human being would ever do that to another person when they're dead. Like, when a person is dead and spent 7 years and they commit suicide in front of you, and then I have to be the one to go to a nursing home and watch people get sick and die, watch suffering, hear people cry. Nobody gave me $1. Nobody gave me, here's some lunch money. Go enjoy yourself some Subway food. Like, go, you know, here's nobody gave me anything. I was eating shit food at my house. And it was very difficult. So, you know, I wanted to talk about this because it's very difficult. You know, my mother's twin didn't give a rat's ass. The disgusting behavior what this person was doing was so maliciously personally against me. Like, the way that she threw that trash bag, I could not, it was hard for me to understand that it was like you're throwing a dead body in a trash bag, and I just spent 20 years with this man. I spent Christmas, he gave me Christmases with old classics, you know, music. He gave, you know, going to my, you know, we had the same birthday. We celebrated together. For 7 years, I'm hearing him call me all the time. For, you know, and even though that everything wasn't perfect, it took a lot of good experiences going to my soccer games, going, you know, Frankie's karate practice. It was hard for me to understand how you just throw a dead body in a trash bag and nobody cared. And he was a World War II veteran. He was a registered nurse taking care of sick people himself. That we all make mistakes, but the degree, you know, he wasn't a piece of shit his whole life. He protected us and wanted us to be protected. He wanted to give us his money and his house. And ultimately, I got nothing. I got nothing for it. Ken and Sarah's the one that gave me $5,000-$6,000. He didn't give me anything. And, you know, because I got $5,000 or $6,000. I talked about this and I did the math already. And I got five because they paid for the funeral, and that's the leftover money that was left in his bank account or his trust fund or whatever it is. The $50,000, there's nothing in there. And then I didn't get anything for the house because when the house got sold, my mother said that she gave that to me. So my father died and he didn't give me anything. And so I believed he gave me that money. So either one, you could choose whether you want to say who gives me the money or not, because whether it was my mother or father, I didn't get anything for it because they paid for the funeral. The funeral was $12,000, and it was difficult for all in one time because I thought it was my mother, and now that I know that it's not, it was her. The carelessness of it was just like scavenging off a dead body without any remorse. There was no remorse. I don't know many places because it was difficult for me because you got to understand, when I was 18 years old, 2 years before my father died, I had just turned 18, and it was like a week before my birthday, and it was about a week before my birthday, and my best friend Robert Zarate gets killed in a car wreck with Edward Rangel, who's an identical twin, and I didn't know this because I saw him in New York when I was at a bus stop or at the bus exchange, transfer exchanges, and whenever I got there. Before his dad, right after Robert had died, he hadn't been buried yet, and we went to the funeral, and right when I walked in, I remember them closing the door, or not closing the door, but closing the casket, and I just got a sort of not a close look, but at Robert. So just for a split moment, and he was in the coffin. I didn't see Robert. I didn't want to remember him that way. But I was way on the other side of the church, and I just saw them closing from what I can remember. I don't remember. I think I want to say it was just barely if I saw anything. I may have not, or I may have just envisioned what he thought he would have looked like after that car wreck. And when we went to before we got to the funeral, he dies within 2 or 3 days. Me, Daniel Box, Chris Dotson, us three, we were very close with Robert, and we were in the waiting room. We were all kind of getting the reality of Robert had just died. We were all best friends, going to his house all the time and feeding us and smoking weed, and he was my brother. And we go there with Alicia and Mary, and I want to say we were in the car with Mary. I think Chris Dotson showed up on his own, and me and Daniel showed up in a Suburban, and we met up. We go to the hospital, and when we get there, we're in the waiting room, and Mr. Zarate, Robert Zarate, his name is Robert Zarate, just like Robert Zarate Jr., Robert Zarate Sr., just like my biological father, who I don't know. He's Hector Sr., but I'm Hector Jr. But I don't know my biological father. But I have the same birthday with Raymond Palomo, January 6th. And what happens is, anyway, Alicia and Mary are in the room, and Mr. Zarate's dying. And he's not dying in the moment, but he very much looks like it, and he's very sick. And at the time, I did not understand. Nobody explained to me, but I thought that he was just having organ failure, but he was dying of cancer, and he had liver cancer, and I didn't know that he had cancer, and I knew that it was kept very under wraps. They were just praying to hope that it would heal and get better, and it didn't. And, Robert was going through a lot, and I just know that he was having heart problems and organ failure, and he was having problems with, they were pumping fluid out of his lungs and stomach, a lot of fluid, half a gallon, almost a gallon, or there was a lot of fluid they were pumping. He was very sick. We go into the room for maybe 10 minutes to comfort his dad, and his dad knows how close I am with him, because I used to go to his house all the time, and he would be on the love seat, and we used to have all these conversations about life, and about God and his wife. He used to talk about his first wife to me. He had conversations about my mother. He was a mentor to me, and he used to always joke around, and he cared for my life very much. He was a very, very loving and kind person. And I had to try to comfort the situation, and we're all crying, and Chris Dotson, Daniel Box, and we're just very hard on him because his dad is. He looks like he's dying, and I was told, when Mary and Alicia came into the lobby, they said that he was picking up the phone looking for his son randomly. He was calling random numbers on the phone looking for Robert because he was so heartbroken. He was so heartbroken. Like, I've never seen this type of situation. I've spent 7 years in the nursing homes and seen, families here and there and suffering and crying. But in this particular situation, I've never experienced this, where I had seen a man so heartbroken from his son dying that it was what killed him. It's what took his life, that his son died, that his only boy out of 7 girls that he raised, who named Robert and living in the house, was no longer alive. And I remember him telling me, he says, Hector, he used to tell me, and I want to say, I think he told me on his deathbed, in that situation, so that I just said, you should earn your certificate, or GED. And he used to tell me that he dropped out of high school, and he used to walk like an hour, one direction and back, just to earn his GED. And he said it was hard. He goes, I didn't have anybody, and it was really difficult for me to try to earn my GED. He goes, but I did it, and I earned my GED. It was hard, and he talked about this when he was 60. He was like 50 years old, 55 years old, and he's telling me this. He can remember this when he was young, when he was a young kid. He's telling me that he's like 16 years old, 15 years old, earning his GED because he had dropped out of high school. And he'd always, he told me, he goes, Hector, you should go to school, you should, earn your GED. And he was very heartbroken. I've never come across, like I said, if there's anything of this story, I've never seen a man so heartbroken that the fact that his son died is what ultimately felt that took his life. I talked about with Alicia and Rodrigo and Mary. Daniel and Chris, we all synchronized and felt this way. The way that he died was because his son was killed in a car wreck. And it was brutal. And he was so young. And people don't know that, I was, out of all the friends, I had a tremendous amount of communication with him. I'd show up and he had me sit down and talk, and I used to go to church all the time, with Robert too. And when he died, once he got out of the hospital, I started visiting him. Because I didn't want to violate too much. I had to find a balance. You gotta understand, I'm going to his house all the time, but I had to not make things difficult. And so I went to the house 2 or 3 times, maybe 4, and after that hospital visit, and after the hospital situation, within a month or 2, he passed away. But Mr. Girardi was in the house when he died. He died in the house. And what happened was I went there and I was driving my Plymouth Laser, broken down car. At this point, I think yeah, at this point, I'm living at my apartment. I can't make it through the 3 flights of stairs. I'm still having trouble breathing. I have no food. I'm eating ramen and noodles. I was crying, depressed, like you would not. It was one of the most difficult, depressing times that I can emotionally ever come close to. And I recall making an effort. I had making $8 an hour, and I went to go visit him once, and I said to make him feel good, to make him, but I had no idea. It was so difficult. It was the most difficult situation was try to make an understanding of something and make it godly to walk to, because when he saw me, he saw Robert. And we went there, and he was like he was like grasping and dying, and there was so much of a part of him died that it was hard. I've never experienced anything like that before. Like, it was a part of him that died so deep of his son that and we all talked about it, and we all felt it, that he died because his son died. He had let go. He didn't want to be alive anymore. And it wasn't like a suicide. He just couldn't find a reason why to stick around anymore, because his baby boy died. And I'm talking to him, and I tried to. It was difficult because I don't. There's not really much you can say other than, you just can't. Oh, God makes reasons why they happen, and why and this tragedy happens, and we go there and we talk, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but I was, I spoke lightly about Robert to try to kind of put some remembrance to him. And it was tough because he was like, we were in the living room and the big screen TV, and he was just like he was dying. And he wasn't there was nobody there. You just spoke to him a little bit, watching TV. And Selena was walking in, sat for a couple minutes and left. And I was just sitting next to him, and there was nothing that I could say other than, try to focus maybe more on something that was my life. I'm living in my apartment. My mother's moving back. I didn't tell him that because I didn't know if I was going to end up homeless. People don't even understand this. When my mother didn't move back into the house until March or May. I think it was like March or May it was about 6 months after Robert died. And it wasn't until my mother told me that Lucio, her husband, this guy who snatched Julian's twin, had a son that died in an 18-wheeler car accident. He crushed and killed. He got killed. 3 other people. One survived, and there was 3 people that got killed. And one of them was his son, and he used to be Julian's friend. Well, it wasn't until he died that after like a month later, a couple of weeks later, my mom said that I want to go back to the house. I want to come back to the house, and I don't want to be here with Lucio anymore. And it was weird because this guy just died. Aren't you supposed to be supporting your husband if this kid just died also? So anyway, I have no idea where I'm going to live. And he kept on telling me that your mother should be loving you. Because your mother, when he was dying, this is what I do remember. In the hospital, he was telling me how bad the world is and how awful people just are. That, we're the family. It's kind of like a Mexican thing too. It's kind of like La Familia, the heritage, kind of like a feel to it. And Dana was very much included into that, but it goes by what we understand. it is a bad world. And he always used to tell me, "Be careful. Your mother shouldn't be thrown to the streets like that. You're a good kid." And I remember him telling me that before in the hospital. He goes, "Hector, it's bad out there." He goes, "Your mother shouldn't be doing this to you." And he was dying. I'm telling you this. And when we were in the living room, he told me, and he said, "Hector," he goes, it's bad out there. Your mother shouldn't be doing this to you." And at this point, I'm like, I weigh 135 pounds. Like, no, I'd say 100, no more than 145, but I'm about 135 to 145 pounds. I'm driving a Plymouth Laser, beat up, ragged out. I'm telling you, it is the worst car you'll ever experience in life. I've never seen a worse car in my life that was fun. I could floor the car, and I'm not kidding you, I could run faster. I promise you, I could run faster, like 20 yards. I mean, it was, I don't know how the car could function. It was like running on AA batteries or something. It was wild. But I drive this car. The car is overheating. I have to put a gallon of water in the anti-cooler to try to make it make it a 20-minute drive from Center Point Apartments to his house. You don't understand that I am so fearful of digging in trash cans for food at this point. I didn't know that my mother's was being disgusting. Her identical twin was. And I didn't know that it wasn't my mother that was talking. It was her sister. But he told me this, and he didn't want me to be out in the streets. He said, "Hector, you're a good kid." He goes, "You shouldn't be out there." And if there's cameras, you'd be able to say this, but I remember, him saying that when he was dying. So I leave, I come back and visit once or twice more. Total, I think he was no more, probably 3-4 times, but he was probably no more than 3 times to come back just to make him feel good, just to like that his life valued, but there was just my presence is enough. And I was suffering like I couldn't express. No family. Michael was coming into my apartment. "What's up, fucking bitch ass motherfucker? I told you so, bitch." And he would talk like that coming into my apartment at Center Point Apartments after he trashed my house. It was really bad. Like, he was getting cracked out on drugs, strung out, and he wanted to kill me. He used to have, but anyway, he was really bad on drugs, but people had no idea. Anthony came over to my apartment when I first got there, the first 6 months of my efficiency, and Richard, they all felt really bad for me, so did Nick. They all felt really bad. Like, damn, like, they were all saying, like, "Hey, where's your mom? Like, who does this to their kid? Like, who throws your kid into a garbage can? You throw it to, like, you don't have anything, Hector. Like, damn, Hector, I feel bad for you." And Anthony, I remember saying that. And so what happens is, anyway, I'm 18 to 19 years old when Robert dies. And 18 and a half when I move into my apartment. Next year, I'm 19 years old. Within 3 to 4 months, I moved out of that apartment because I went from an efficiency to a one-bedroom apartment. And so I visited Robert, and Mr. Zarate dies. I hear about it because the third or fourth time that I went over there, I don't know if he told me or I called Rodrigo. He told me he had died. He said that he performed CPR on him, and he said that he was sitting on the couch and he started making this noise or something. So he couldn't breathe, and I don't know if he started convulsing, and he laid him on the ground in the same place where I was talking to him, in this beautiful laid out ground. They got brand new tile in the house, very beautiful. He had a beautiful house, and he was in the living room, and because they had 2 living rooms, but it was the larger, the first entries of the living room. And he said that he started doing CPR, and he tried bringing him back to life, and he said he was sort of slowly dying, and he said that he wasn't getting a heartbeat. He said he died, and he said he kept on trying to do CPR, and he was holding him in his arms, and he died in his arms. Rodrigo had Mr. Zarate die in his arms, and it was difficult because I heard him talk over the phone, and I didn't go to the funeral. And it wasn't because I wanted to bail out on. I couldn't. The stress of everything that was going on, because I had nothing at this point. I was being my father's calling. I hadn't seen my father in like 8 months. I hadn't talked to him but maybe once or twice over the phone. People were threatening me on my job. I was making $7.50 an hour. My rent and bills were like $1,200. Even working overtime. I mean, I was standing on my feet. It was a worst job. Warehouse, heat, fans, dirt, and dust all day. No, it was just, you don't understand the type of suffering. My body was breaking down so bad. And I was trying to strive for life, and my mother would be nasty to me at times. It wasn't my mother, it was her identical twin. My mother showed up a couple of times where I saw her, and it was just, things were different. She was just a very gentle person, but it was wild. So anyway, I'm 19 years old, and I end up moving back to the house. In the whole situation, Marco shows up with one kid. I didn't know the dad shows up, and we're there for like, I don't know, 6 months before my mother just leaves again. Like 6 months, and then I get kicked out of the house. And no, I think we stayed there for, was it 6 months? Yeah, I think it was like 6 months. It was like another 6 months, and then my mother leaves, and I get abandoned again. So I have to fetch out my own life again, and for 6 months, for the next, my dad dies within a year. I can't remember where I went, where I lived. I think I lived with Nick Herrera's dad for a little while, John Lieberton. He's a co-worker of mine for a couple of months, and then my father dies. But it was so difficult because I had seen the man, I was around him, and he was such a good person to me. Very kind, feed me food, and good Mexican food. He used to love my mother. Before my mother's accident, my mother used to make menudo and give him. He used to always talk about my mother's menudo was very good. He loved my mother's menudo, and so he, when I spoke to Mr. Zarate, and he had witnessed so much heartbreak with his son. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. When you lose a kid, and he was so destroyed, like he had no purpose to live anymore, and it looked like that's what took his life. And we talked about this, and and it was hard on me because he could see me, and he could see what, like it brought so much intense memory. Obviously, also with Daniel Box, Chris Dobson, but I was there for the very beginning. Like back in Oak Cliff, before Daniel, and like I used to go to Robert's house when I was a kid, when I was in elementary school, after my dad's suicide. Right after my dad's suicide, because Robert showed up in January of 6th grade, the last 6 months of good elementary, and the last 2 months of school before it all ended. Robert used to invite me all the time, because he lived down the street from me. He goes, "Why don't you come over to my house and play some video games with me?" And I'd say, "Okay." So we're kids. I'm 12 years old. I'm 13 now. And we go to his house, and his dad used to get off work, and Robert would be there at the house by himself until his dad showed up. And his dad showed up like about 5 to 6 o'clock, and we would play video games. And his dad used to bring back in the old school a bag of chips, a burger from the Oak Cliff. This is in the hood, in Oak Cliff, and with chips, French fries, a soda, and a burger from the ghetto, a burger from the hood in Oak Cliff, where they come from, because his dad worked out there, and he had been working at the company for like 40 years. He worked at more than 40 years. He worked at a company for like 30 years, at one company for 30 years. And anyway, see, I remember that. You know, he used to call. He goes, "You bring your little friend." He goes, "Hey, you got your cute little friend here. Here's what's your name?" And he goes, "My name's Hector." You know, and it was like before Alicia just moved in. And but anyway, when you go through these experiences, and it was difficult. My mother puts this trash bag. My father dies, and I don't know who would have sent this person and why, and the details, to have her identical twin not only just pose, but behave that way, and then have it to blame on her, to then turn it against me, because it's them that's doing it, because they have the money and they have the power of every lawyer you can imagine. And it was just like trash, you know, like trash, and just didn't care. No, not a care in the world. And it was nasty. And you know, me and Frankie didn't go out. When we were talking in my room, because my dad had just died. The last year and a half, I didn't see my father but one time, because I got kicked out of the house. I had no way to get to him. I didn't want to call him because I was so depressed beyond anything. I could barely feed myself, and I could not handle me, like I had nothing. You don't understand. My mother would go to the homeless shelter instead of helping me to buy food while she was renting out my dad's house, to bring me leftover canned food, pineapple canned foods, juices, like from the homeless shelter, and then lied to me. She didn't even bring grocery stores, and she would tell me she spent $100 on this food, and it wasn't. It was food that was being given to the homeless shelter. Like, I wouldn't say the homeless shelter; it was a food pantry, because I had no idea what food pantries were. You don't understand that I mentally don't know what these places are. We never went to them as kids. And she's showing up saying that she gave me this food, and it wasn't this food. It was, and she would yell at me, telling me how much money she spent. She didn't spend $1. She got all this free food from the food pantry, and she would yell at me, telling me she gave me that food and paid for it. And it was very bad, because when my father finally dies, and Julian must have known that was Julian. He knew. That's why, because Frankie did not run out and said, "Okay, Mom." He didn't say that. He didn't do any of that. We were talking, and it was very nasty how this person was trying to make it about themselves, because however the psychologists or whoever, these persecuting people, they took everything. I'm telling you right now, I ultimately didn't get anything. I could say, because there was $12,000 left in my dad's bank account. The house was already paid off. The cars, the property in the house, I didn't receive $1 from that house being rented. Now, $1, that house got rented for 1 year. My mother told me they were renting out the house for $600 a month. 3-bedroom house, to Lucio's family that was living there. And I've never seen a house so trashed out so bad. There was so many roaches that it was like they had probably demolished the house. There were so many fucking roaches in that house. I mean, there was a hole in the wall. It was just horrific. And the carpet was all trashed. The people that lived there really did trash the house. They didn't give a shit. I didn't receive $1, 1 penny. We moved back into that house. Then my dad dies 6 months later, a year later. But all that money and everything, when my dad dies, there's only $12,000 left for a funeral. Because Sarah and Ken said that they wanted to pay the funeral. They paid for the funeral. So you know what happened? Because Robert Palomo in New York, he's the one that paid for the limousine. And they paid for he paid for like the food, and he paid for the limousine. And Sarah and Ken said they would pay, and they paid for the burial, the coffin, the tombstone, and the burial process. They paid for that. And that's what they said that they had paid. And so what happens is we have me, Frankie, and Julian. Us three have to split $12,000 that's left. That's all that's left. And the house is going to get sold, and we're going to figure out how that house is going to be split up between us. Frankie, and Julian, one of the best vibes I've ever gotten in our lifetime. And Julian used to say this, and Frankie did too. Where Frankie, and Julian are in the same room talking to one another because we grew up. And Julian was like, "Yeah, I like us three. You know, we're all together. You know, we're all brothers. You know, and we're all talking." And what happens is Frankie says, "You can go ahead and have the money. $12,000. You can go ahead. I don't want the money here. I'm just going to let you go ahead and have it." And this is when I'm thinking, and Julian's looking at Frankie questionable too, like, where happened to the money? And he goes, "The money got spent. Mom had to pay for bills," and he was very rubbish to talk about it. And so Frankie gives me the $6,000, and it was supposed to be used for the funeral. So Ken and Sarah's the one that gave it, because if Ken and Sarah didn't pay for that funeral, then I wouldn't have gotten anything from my father. Ultimately, that's where the money went, $6,000. So the $6,000 to $7,000. So that's what I got, and it was because of Ken and Sarah. That's why. That's who gave me the money, because that money was supposed to go for the funeral. I didn't get anything from my father. He didn't give me anything. It was them that paid for the funeral. I was left with zero, no money. The house is valued at $125,000. I get kicked out of the house. When the house is over with, I'm living in my apartment. The house finally gets sold within 6 months, 8 months. And my mother, I don't know if it was my mother, I don't think it was her, I think it was her identical twin, says that they sold the house for, I think it was like $65,000. Like, I could not say how much that house is going to be sold for. I could not say I was pissed. My dad was mad also because his house was being sold and he's not getting a penny for it. And my mother says that they sold the house for dirt cheap. They got that house, I want to say after taxes, because half of that was like $35,000 or like $30,000, and then my mom said that there was taxes my dad didn't pay. Or she could make up lies, and I could tell her attitude. So there was $30,000. There was like $30,000 or $25,000 split between me, Frankie, and Julian. Do you know how much I got out of that money? I think it was $8,000. It was like $8,500. It was less than that. It was about $8,500 because the money together that I got was from the funeral that Ken and Sarah gave me, and then the house together was like $14,000. So the funeral was like $6,500, and then the house was like $8,000. It's like just about $8,000, $8,500, give or take. So I got $8,000 out of $125,000, but I had to spend 7 years going to a nursing home. My dad killed himself in front of me. I was very close to my father. We were all experiencing family together. They rented out the house for 1 year, didn't receive a penny. That's how I got treated. So I only got $8,000, and my mother's twin told me this. I don't have to give you a goddamn penny. I'm the one I don't have to give you nothing. So what did my father give me? nothing. Now I had to be grateful for my mother telling me, you see what money I gave you? Now, obviously, the psychologist and was telling the twins, my mother's twin, and tell whoever bought the house and all this situation. But I wanted to talk about this because I think it's important to understand that my father ultimately didn't. My mother told me she gave me that, and she said it's because I think that I didn't have to give you nothing, but I wanted to give you that $8,000 out of $125,000. She said that she sold the house for like $80,000 or something. She was very scubblish with the words, and then they had to pay taxes $20,000 or some shit like that. But I ended up with $8,500. And it was my mother's twin that, I don't know if it was my mother, it was my mother's identical twin that was mouth very nasty. But you got to understand, when she's talking to me over the phone, it was very disgusting. It was very like, it's my money, it's fucking, I mean, there's no empathy. There's no empathy at all, you piece of shit. That's exactly how she was talking. And that's what happened. So what did my father give me? But I wasn't allowed to get mad. My mother's the one that gave me my father's money. When my father didn't, and she said, I don't have to give you nothing. I don't have to give you shit. And it was difficult. And because, I talked about that, my mother used to tell my dad all the time, endrógate, tómate los pastillas, until he finally killed himself and ended up in a nursing home. My father wasn't perfect. There was times where he called my mother a bitch numbers of times, and he'd get drunk and behave bad and call, but you don't understand. It was not bad. It was not horrific as bad as I heard people do that, alcoholics. It was not. And he just wanted to enjoy himself watching movies and drinking and have a good time. And it was very difficult because nobody gave a shit. I had to watch a trash bag, and that was it. It was 20 years, and that was it. And they didn't want to talk to my mom again. The rapes that happened to Frankie, everything I went through, trash. So they bought my mother a house and all, gave her all these money and cars and helping her other kids. Nobody cared, and they stole everything. Oh, we met Michael Jackson though, huh? So I thought it was important for me to talk about, because I know they started off with the brief case, the brief, the reading of the book reading, and hopefully this talks about some other personal things that whoever organizes against my mother used her as an accessible weapon to get away with what they did. And I was never told one word. I did free labor for 7 years and got nothing. Because my father was always, when I was 5 years old coming home from first grade, for my up until he committed suicide, and then afterward, tell me he was like wanting to honor me, Frankie, and Julian, always saying, I want you guys to have this money. I want you guys to have this house. And he was wanting to honor us, and I was wanting to honor his wishes. And all the soccer games and karate practices my dad paid for, vacations that we took occasionally, nothing mattered. Nothing. Because nobody, and you had Kenneth show up, poison the shit out of me, kept me controlled with his gay community, manipulated, talking shit about my dad's sister, my biological father, using my coworkers against me, all kinds of crazy shit. And this is all after Sarah Cooper's laughing at the funeral. Like, it was hard for me to understand that why is it that this person is showing up and doesn't even know I'm doing this, because they know what they're doing. They're using my mother to be an abusive tool, and that's why because they can get away with it. They're the ones that are disposing my father. They're the ones that disposing me and the rapes, because they knew about the rapes. They knew what they were doing. It takes a long time, and it took a lifetime for my dad to earn that money. It took a lifetime to earn that money. And I didn't get any of it. What did my father give me? Just a horrible memory of trauma. Going to nursing homes for nothing. I'm doing this for Julian as well. What did Frankie get all these rapes for? Oh, dream makeover's house, yeah, for my mother, and yeah, just blame it on her, make her feel sorry, and then psychology, yeah, and they did. That's how exactly what they did. They got away with it. It's murder. It's like cold-blooded suffering. Throw gasoline on your ass. Throw gasoline on you and burn you alive, and don't let you die quite yet. Like, just watch you filth and suffering. Like, it's so unfair. These people had nothing, didn't care. They had more money to buy anything they wanted, and they got away with it. They didn't care, and it's very painful, when, you have these small memories when there was no more money. And those memories are the only things I have to remember that human life, my father, these things with my mother, these things with my brother, and I can't, it's all tainted, and they strip you, and there's no one to talk about it. So anyway, I thought I'd make a video about this. I've been talking for an hour. I don't know if you have time to watch these videos, get you a little understanding a little bit about my life, and I hope that this resonates. It was very hurtful. People don't even understand that I was sick, and I didn't know that I was. I was very weak, and I was still going to the nursing home with my dad up until the last year and a half. I didn't see him but once. But it was so bad because I was spending time in the efforts of humanity to just go and visit Mr. Girardi for 2-3 times. And my mother was so discarding of my life and so nasty that it was so, you don't understand it. It was like I felt like I was like digging in a trash can for food and asking for somebody to share, if they wanted to share, I could share some of this with them. Like, I had $3 in my pocket, pennies in my ashtray. The car had no AC, window wouldn't roll down, this rusted car, no furniture in my apartment, clothes that I've had since I was for 5-6 years, raggedy shoes, nothing. Like, I was like, my face started breaking out really bad in acne. The worst acne you've ever seen on anyone have was on my face. The worst. I was sick. And I remember thinking, like, I wanted to do, like, walk the mile for Mr. Girardi, that I didn't forget what he had done for me and how he treated me, and the mentoring and the wonderful experiences and the life that we shared, and the life that we shared with Mr. Girardi, with Robert Girardi. And I thought it was important for me to talk about, because here I am dealing with I haven't seen my dad in a long time, and I was missing him, and don't know if people are pissing on him, because the last time, the time that right before I moved into my apartment, I didn't see him for about a year, maybe a little less than a year and a half. It was probably close to a year I didn't see him. But you understand that between that time, the last time that I saw him, not before he died, but the last time I saw him before we took that huge 1-year break, I walked into a room and there was a janitor yelling at my father, treating him like shit and trash in front of me. And that was one of the last times I saw my father. And all I could think about is that they were beating him in his nursing home bed. And I remember that. I remember the whole situation. And it was really bad. It was horrific. It was like watching a 80-year-old man in his bed just being like hit. Like I could just imagine. This lady looked like she was about to hit him. Like this wasn't just like to hit him because I was there, like just to abuse him because she wanted to take it out on him. And I'm not kidding. You know, I had to think that for a year, and like I had no money, no gas. I'm trying to I'm working 8 to 10 hour days, making $7. You know, I can barely stand up. I'm getting nosebleeds at work. My face was breaking out for like 6 months with acne so bad that I had to. I mean, it was horrific. These were like welts that were on my face it was like double the amount of pimples that you can imagine, like horrific, really bad. And because my blood was bad, and but I thought I'd talk about that because it's over now. And you know, I'm telling you, that heartbreak that I saw, I've never seen a man lose a son and be that heartbroken, like emotionally. Like I've never seen anybody like cry. They had a cry like that. Like had an emotion like that. Like it was. I've never seen anything like that. I've been in nursing homes. I went to my aunt's hospital visits, seen other kids cry, you know, or sick, cancer. I had seen, you know, her, you know, I was 9 years old to 10 years old when she first told me she was going to die. You know, Ceci, you know, my grandma and my mother. I'd never seen this type of emotional trauma within even my own family when you lose somebody and you're heartbroken, crushed, like a son, like your kid, child died, you know, in that brutal way. And it was brutal. So, you know, it's hard because you know, you're left with these memories, and people, you know, they just strip everything away from you. It's just like the Holocaust. Like you don't even have money, you don't have anything, and then they take your memories from you, and they take these things to say they never belonged to you, and they tell you Barack Obama for the niggas, or for the president, white power, white supremacy. It was very difficult. You know, these scumbags showed up and that's what they did. You know, it was all about, it was just really bad. You know, I thought I'd make a video, you know, because give some explanation. I talked about most of these subjects before, but some other few subjects I haven't talked about. But, you know, it's hard when you do something like that out of the kindness for so many years, and I'm not getting anything out of it. Nobody's giving me extra lunch money. Nobody's giving me nice clothes to wear high school. When I go to high school, I don't get a $1,000 gift card to go shopping at a mall and get to wear nice shoes and nice clothes for school. My mom gives me $120, $180, $150. I think maybe one year gave me $220 so that I could go spend, and I'm supposed to buy shoes and brand new clothes for the rest of the year. I go to TJ, I don't go to the mall, I go to like Ross and TJ Maxx. You know, they didn't have like Walmarts really at that time with all the clothes back then like they do now, but you know, that's what I get, and I get $120, my mother tells me, and I'm wearing the same clothes repeatedly, and it's very difficult because I'm getting nothing to go to a nursing home. He kills himself. I'm watching people suffer, and my dad following his honor steps before his suicide, and then after he tells me this, he's giving me the house and money to my two brothers and me, and I get nothing. During and after. All that work and everything I did, I didn't do anything. It was for my mother's twin to tell me, oh, I don't have to give you shit. I didn't get anything. So I thought I'd make a video anyway. Um, you can see why I was so mad and so hurt. Aside from all the money that goes on, I never seen anything like that when he was dying like that. And he was dying like that. I mean, he was on the verge of just dying in front of me. He was very close to it, and I remember trying to kind of lift his head up, not physically, but like kind of lift up his spirit a little bit, make him feel good. When I went and visited him, it was so hard for me because I didn't want to talk about my problems, and you don't understand. Like, I'm about to be thrown to the streets for real, like. No money, no brother, no nothing. And I don't know about food stamps. They don't even want to give me food stamps. They're giving me like $10 on food stamps. I'm not kidding you. They gave me like $20 for food stamps when I was living at that apartment. $7 a night, nothing. Like raggedy clothes, car broken down. Horrific, really bad. Nobody helps me. And I wanted to talk about this because I think it was very important for me to talk about this because, it's tough, how evil and how monstrous human beings are. And then you have these celebrities what they make in a single day, what they make in an hour, they shit it out of their ass horrifically using the public eye, monsters, to then throw it at me and then say, look what I fixed and what I did for Michael Jackson, what I did for the president, or look what I did for the rapes. I don't get my life again. There's no justice. There's no justice at all for this. And but I've never seen heartbroken like that before, where you died. Like I've never been in an environment, like I said, I've been in nursing homes. I used to walk people crying all the time, and there's nothing you can really do. You have to stay focused on school. You have to focus on your family, your own goals. You just be polite when you can. You greet them, say nice, hello, and you have to sort of just move on and keep it going because my dad used to tell me this. Oh, you worry about me now. You're worried about them too much, and spend time with my dad, but it was difficult because nobody knows that, nobody cared. So nobody cares. They're worthless dead bodies that they throw in a trash can, just like my dead sister. They didn't care. Wherever these people, they scheme out to whatever it is that they can get at it for themselves because they throw themselves in the pool of whatever, who's going to give out free handouts. I wasn't getting anything. What did my father give me? What did he give me? In financial, what did that? And nobody understands the treatment I got from people being persecuted, that I was going to just there to steal his money. But Mr. Zarate, that was difficult, that was difficult. You go chivo and tomate and life passes by and that's it. You come across so many evil monsters, like this fat ass that sits in the corner, just thinking about, look how he's going to kill me, determine, the president is going to have me murdered, or these people on the buses and the bus drivers telling me he has a gun, he's going to kill me, having a murder attempt placed on me when I'm 31 years old at a cemetery. All these things that go on, so many monsters, all these things that Mr. Zarate used to tell me, all the things that, my dad used to tell me. And that's difficult. There's a lot of monsters out there, horrific people, real bad. And you think they're good, and they claim they're good. I saw Elon Musk, billionaire, gets on TV next to Donald Trump, and he goes, don't worry, I got the money. And he's a computer genius. They do it on the internet, and they know what's going on. I know that sounds off topic, but it's unbelievable that these people got treasured as heroes, and it was for the white supremacists and for the niggas, for the black niggas, and how disgusting that is, because the money didn't have value anymore. And they wanted to make sure that they shitted out for President Barack Obama, like, there's no justice. They put me in a trash can. I'm not kidding you that I still think to this day that it may be possible. Because when I leave here, it's going to be probably living back out on the streets unless they give me an apartment in Dallas. And when I take my voucher, whether I find an apartment early or not, I'm going there to look for an apartment when I get there. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but I don't think it could very much well end up with a sign on a road or forced to dig in a trash can because I'm being beaten and mutilated by force, by the gay community and the transgenders and what the president is ordering. They do not care. The military and the people that are watching these videos, the psychology, don't give a fuck. They don't care. And it's hard. You don't understand that you have all these memories to think about. For 10 years, I'm living in Alaska, Seattle, Washington, Denver, sleeping next to trash cans in parks, alleys. I have no idea what my life is like. Thinking, I hope they don't make me dig into this trash can. Thinking about maybe there's something to eat, this trash can that I'm forced to eat, that it's going to be edible. I won't get sick. I have $30 in my pocket. I'm in Alaska. Someone charges at me with, it looks like he has a weapon in his hand. And it's 3 o'clock in the middle of the night and it's snowing. Nobody knows or cares. And it's very hurtful because that's what you're thinking of. That's what I got to think about when I was in that trash can. When I was, smelling shit. I hadn't taken a shower. Sometimes I didn't get to take a shower for a month in some cases. Always got most of the time I always got lucky to take at least one shower. I got to have at least one shower a week at a recreation, or a couple showers during the week during the recreation, not to abuse that too much. Just to ask for a nice shower, at a recreational center. Because I didn't have anything. So remember the nice people, kind people at Seattle, Washington. I was there, I was sleeping underneath the bridge, and I take a shower once a week. Do laundry in the public restroom, in the sink, in a bottle of water, and had no idea just to even get a cup of coffee and sit down on a chair, to even have that. To even sit down on some simple, comfortable chair. Sometimes it makes me cry. It makes me feel like I would cry to think about how mutilating people treated me and how they were for so many years. Because they took everything and wouldn't, my efforts, they were just being put down, and I was in the public eye. I couldn't tell you enough the monstrous actions that people did and the horrific things for the support of the white supremacist Ken Cooper and Sarah Cooper and Kenneth at the radio station, how mastermind and manipulating that was. In my work environments prior, to my dad's passing, after, for so many years, went to a hospital, paid a hospital $500,000, didn't get anything from it. I walked away and didn't sue the hospital for it. Nothing. I gave you $500,000. I got sick with a transplant. Got nothing for it. I got 50 tickets. I don't know, but like I said, it was so important for my father, and I remember Mr. Zarate and a few other people always talking about, don't let somebody take your youth. You're young. When you get old, or you're young. And that's what they did. And they're on TV, you see YouTube videos and these pigs, and they're filthy people. There's so much suffering, they just pick out which ones. Oh yeah, it's horrific. It's really bad. You have no idea how nasty, monster human being. You want to really find the demons in this world. Those are the demons of this world. Those people. The actions and things that they do in groups of societies, of homosexual societies, and several other people, how disgusting they are and were. When I would do nothing, I would be so kind, and there were times where I would be thinking, to the honest core of myself, to just fall on my knees and just, before I walk into a recreation center or some, please sir, can I have $1 or $2? Please don't harm me, please, I just want to be alive, please, because they were in riots, Jack in a Box, McDonald's, and it was just like that. Like I was just gonna have to, like, please sir, please don't harm me, please, please, because I was always feared that they were just gonna start punching me and beating me for no reason, just because they could. The police officers endlessly let them know that they were allowed to, and I was always gonna be. They were always gonna turn their tables on me, always, no matter what. And they did hundreds of dozens and dozens of times when I called them, telling electronic devices are shooting me, or somebody was threatening me, or somebody threw feces at me, or somebody leashed their dog on me, or somebody spit at me. You know, the police officers start laughing when I tell them somebody was spitting at me. Oh, somebody did? Well, then just move. The power of Kane Cooper, a white supremacist, you know, and they would say, wouldn't say those words, but they would laugh. Then move, huh? Oh, somebody spit at you? I had a cop once. True story. And I finish the story up. I was living over by. Living underneath the bridge. I think it was not the George Bush, but across the George Bush Turnpike at Home Depot where I used to work. But it's not there no more. They demolished it. It's at the Trinity Mills station. And this is this train station where I thought I saw the porn star that I thought I saw Michaela with. I went to the porn convention in Vegas like 8 months ago, and I thought it was him. And I didn't say anything, but it looked like him also when I saw him at that train store. He was just like, he looked like he was lost. He looked like he had brain damage, without a doubt, when I saw him there. I don't know. It looked like he was completely, it looked like he was completely lost. But anyway, I was living underneath the bridge, and I was living there for like a month, 3 weeks, and there's trash all under there. There's other people that probably live there, and I was always worried that there was sometimes like people, they shit there because they don't have places to go. So you have to kind of look all over the ground to see where they didn't piss and where they didn't shit, so you don't lay in somebody else's feces on the ground underneath, because there's no shelter in the area. It's very hard. Very hard. And I've even seen that there's trash all over there. It's like I'm not kidding, there's trash, like a significant amount of trash that you kind of, and you don't understand that there's no place that I can hide and go because the cops keep pulling me over. And I need accessible to quick train, bus, and it's probably one of the best sort of places. I start sleeping across the street also well by the lake, right behind the Muslim church. And when I'm living underneath that bridge, I call the cops because I kept on saying somebody's beating the electronic devices, and this pig shows up and he spits in my direction, and nearly in my direction, and he's chewing tobacco. Like, tobacco gets you high. I've never chewed tobacco ever in my life, but I just know that it gets people really high. It gives people like a buzz, like an intoxication drug. That's what it does. And this guy was chewing tobacco, and he goes, "Oh, really? He's shooting the electronic devices? Well, I'm going to need you to leave here." And he goes like that, and he kind of shoots his head like he's about 20 feet away from me. He goes, "Yeah, I got a call," or I don't know if I'm going to say I called him, or he showed up, and he's just like, "Hey," he goes, "Somebody said you're going to have to leave. Somebody said you're living here." And he spits. And he spits like, I'm like 20 feet away from him. He's looking at me, and he's chewing tobacco like, "Smiley, you fucking homeless piece of shit. I'm going to need you to leave." And he just like looking at me like scum shit. You know, you see things, experience things like that. And I had already been homeless for 3-4 years by this time. 4 years constantly. Seattle, Washington, Alaska, Denver, Colorado, back and forth, Dallas, back and forth. I had already done traveling to Alaska and Seattle when I got to Dallas, and I was living underneath the bridge. People are evil, very bad, and they enjoy it, and they like it. They have plenty of money, and the money you think it's not just cash; it's in different ways of what they take away.